Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 143, Meno 97a to c. Dialectic, dialektike techne, the art of dialogue, includes, among other things, the ability to remember previous parts of the dialogue so that we can go back and compare what we are now saying with what we said then. Socrates is currently testing Meno's ability to remember what has been said in earlier parts of the conversation by deliberately misremembering the part of the conversation after the hypothesis that virtue is something teachable, and they had reached the conclusion that phronesis, which is the highest form of virtue, prudence, when it is present, guides people to good and correct acts. But now he's been saying that they said then that a good person could guide other people well and correctly. And he's now saying that they were wrong to agree to that. And in particular, they were wrong to agree that someone who leads correctly is phronimos, or prudent. This, of course, wasn't said at all, because they weren't talking about people guiding other people. They were talking about a particular characteristic of the soul guiding a person to act correctly. We may imagine that Meno is slightly put out by the notion that someone who guides correctly other people isn't actually prudent, because Meno himself does guide other people. I say guide, but he leads, but this is the same verb in Greek. Meno is a general, and he does lead soldiers. Socrates is making it about Meno, partly, I presume, in order to engage Meno's attention. At least when Meno says, "Poste leges," how do you mean? Socrates replies, "Ego ero," I will tell you. E eidos ten hodon ten es Larissan e hopoibule allos badidzoi kai allois hegoito, alloti orthosan kai iu hegoito, panuge. If knowing the way to Larissa, or wherever else you want, he goes and leads others, wouldn't he lead correctly and well? Absolutely. Who could Socrates have in mind who knows the way to Larissa and leads other people there? Obviously, Meno. Meno's lover, Aristippus, has been commanded by Cyrus, the brother of the king of Persia, to raise troops, and his excuse is to deal with the other faction in Larissa, which is the main city in Thessaly. Aristippus put Meno in charge of these forces. Meno is the general who leads troops to Larissa. And he knows where he's going, obviously, because he manages to reach Larissa with the troops. So, Meno agrees with this statement. Did etis orthos men doxadzon, hetis estin he hodos, eleluthos de me med epistamenos, ukai hutos an orthos hegoito, panuge. But what if there's someone correctly opining which is the way, but hasn't travelled it, nor understands it? Wouldn't this one also lead correctly? Absolutely. It's interesting that Meno is still very sure about this answer, because if someone really is opining correctly, then there's no reason why that person couldn't lead people correctly to Larissa or wherever else you want to go. This person has the correct opinion, although he hasn't travelled the way and doesn't understand or know the way. Now, these two should be connected. How do you understand or know the way unless you have travelled that way? That's really the only way you would know or understand the route. Kai heos ganpu orthodoxan eche, perihon ho heteros epistemen, uden cheiron hegemon estai, oiomenos men alethe, phronon de me, tu tuto phronuntos, uden gar. And so long then as he has correct opinion about the things which the other person has episteme, knowledge, he will be no worse a leader than the one who understands this, although he only opines true things but doesn't understand. Indeed, he's no worse. Meno still answers enthusiastically, although he can't be imagining that this is himself. He knows the way to Larissa. This person only opines correctly. But there's nothing you can argue against that. So long as someone opines correctly, of course he will lead correctly to Larissa. It's not clear how far Meno is following the philosophy here. He may be feeling that he has some unfair competition from someone who doesn't know the way to Larissa like he does, but only has correct opinion. Doxa ara alithes pros orthoteta praxeos, uden cheiron hegemon phroneseos, kai tu to estin ho nunde parele pomen ente perites aretes skepse, hopoionti eie, legontes hoti phronesis monon hegetai tu orthos praten, tode ara kai doxa en alethes, oikege. So opinion, when it's true with regard to the correctness of an action, is no worse a leader than prudence. And this is what we left out in the examination of virtue, what sort of thing it was, saying that prudence alone guides doing correctly, but opinion as well, when true. So it seems. Interestingly, Socrates has returned to talking about phronesis rather than episteme, prudence rather than simply knowledge or understanding, as the original guide to correct action. Now he is suggesting that doxa, opinion, is no worse a guide than phronesis towards the correctness of action. Each time he says doxa, there's another word, and then he says alethes, true doxa, opinion, so long as it is true. Socrates has also returned to the context of the previous discussion and has noted that this is to do with the sort of thing that virtue is. So the argument now is that someone can be a good person using not understanding but opinion, so long as the opinion is correct. Unfortunately, the Christian Church latched onto this notion of correct opinion because in Christianity it is wrong to know God, but you have to have faith in God, and likewise you can't know how to be good, you have to have faith in what you're told to do. Therefore, correct opinion is what every good Christian should have, and correct opinion, being orthodoxa, means that every Christian should be orthodoxos. Early Christians followed different doctrines, and the Roman Christian Church became the strongest and virtually outlawed the other schools of thought by calling them heterodoxoi, people having opinions other than the correct ones, while they themselves were the orthodox. We should not be so hasty to treat Plato as a proto-Christian, and we should suspect that Socrates is not being serious about the content of his assertions, although he is serious about attempting to get Meno to think for himself. Socrates can assume that Meno regards himself as someone who knows the way to Larissa and someone who guides people there correctly. Therefore, pushing orthodoxa as equivalent to episteme in its results is supposed to get Meno to react. Meno would not like the idea that there's a general as good as he is who doesn't understand, who doesn't know, but simply has correct opinion. It's not fair. Socrates keeps pushing. Uden ara heton ophelimon estin orthodox epistemes. Therefore, correct opinion is no less a beneficial thing than knowledge or understanding. And now Meno finally makes a half-hearted attempt to object. Tosuto geos Socrates, hoti homenten epistemen echon aean epitun chanoi, odeten orthendoxan, totemen an tun chanoi totedu. Only to this extent, Socrates, that the one having episteme would always hit the mark, but the one having correct opinion now would hit the mark, but now would not. In other words, Meno is pointing out that opinion is less consistent than episteme, understanding or knowledge. How can Socrates answer that? Pos leges, ho ae echon orthodoxan, uca e antun chanoi, heos per ortha doxadzoi. How do you mean? Wouldn't the one always having correct opinion not always hit the mark, so long as he opines correct things? Ananke moi fainetai. It seems to me necessary. Meno has submitted to a sophistic argument. So long as the opinion is correct, then obviously someone opining correctly and opining correct things will always hit the mark. This argument seems to have convinced far too many people, especially those who call themselves orthodox.